Some killers only speak when it's too late, when their bodies are failing and the truth can no longer hurt them. These are the cases justice forgot, until a deathbed confession forced the silence to break. In this episode of Grim Vault, we uncover 7 chilling stories, final breaths turned into confessions, each one dragging a buried truth back into the light. From bodies hidden in motel freezers to infants sealed behind plaster walls, these aren't just cold cases. They're unfinished stories the system never closed. Our first story starts with a girl on a bike and ends with a truth no courtroom ever heard. 7. The man who couldn't stop killing. Bryant Squires didn't just die from disease, he died rotting, inside and out. Cancer chewed his bones, AIDS hollowed his blood. But what really killed Bryant Squires were the secrets. Because when his body gave up, his mouth finally opened. August 1989. 14-year-old Gina Brooks was pedaling her bike through a Missouri dusk to meet her boyfriend. She never made it. Her bike was found 5 blocks from home. A scream near a church. A station wagon tearing into the night. No body, no witnesses, no charges. Just silence, and a town too afraid to admit what it suspected. 7 years later, Squires lay skeletal in a St. Louis hospital bed, drifting toward death. Nurses said he barely spoke, until he did. Not to police, just to them. He said he drove that night. Said Nathan Williams slit Gina's throat in the back seat. Said Timothy Bellew helped stash her in a freezer, buried beneath Bellew's father's land. The FBI searched, found nothing. But Squires kept unraveling. Angie Houseman, age 9. He said he'd left her tied to a tree, alive in the snow. Then came another name, Laura Dinwiddie, 1975, a volunteer for deaf children. Her throat slit. No motive, just a thrill. The common thread? Nathan Williams. At 14, he was already killing. By 21, he was raping 10-year-olds. He's in prison now, 2 life sentences. But not for murder. Not for Gina, not for Angie, not for Laura, not for Tammy Surdom. Another girl he bragged about, never found. Squires died days later. No official statement, no courtroom closure. Just whispers in a hospital ward. Enough to torment, but not to prosecute. The DA tried. Bellew was charged, then released. Williams, too. The case files sit in a basement, unclosed, unsolved, unclaimed. These aren't cold cases. They're graves with no headstones, buried in bureaucracy and preserved by fear. And the people who could have stopped it? They waited until the killers were dying and the truth no longer mattered. 6. The motel ghost. Disappearing is easy when no one's watching. But this time, the question wasn't where he went. It was who erased him, and how they kept him hidden in plain sight. John Kelly wasn't missing, he was deleted, like an error too shameful to print. In Somerville, Massachusetts, he was known by 2 things: the beer on his breath and the bruises on his wife, Geraldine. Violent, unforgiven. By 1981, he'd burned every bridge. After a drunken fight ended in his brother-in-law's death, John vanished without fanfare, but not for long. A year later, a motel in Ventura, California hired a janitor, silent, anonymous, cleaning messes not his own. Behind the front desk, Geraldine. Same marriage, same silence. They didn't rebuild, they went underground. In 1992, he disappeared again. No obituary, no report, just Geraldine whispering 2 words to anyone who asked. He left. No one cared enough to question it. She ran the motel for 6 more years. Guests checked in, kids laughed by the pool. Geraldine handed out keys with a practiced smile, knowing full well her husband never left. He was there the whole time, wrapped in plastic, curled in the motel freezer she kept powered like a shrine. In 1998, cancer came for her like a collector of old debts. And with it, her silence cracked. On her deathbed, she confessed to her sister. One night, after another beating, she waited until he passed out, picked up a gun, and ended it. Then she cleaned up, like she always did. Only this time, the mess never thawed. When police opened the freezer in a Massachusetts storage unit, they found John, frozen solid, perfectly preserved beside decades of silence. Because some killers don't run, they stay with the body, with the memory, until someone opens the wrong door. 5. The baby in the wall. She wasn't supposed to be found, not by contractors, not by homeowners, not by time. But in 2003, in a quiet Kansas City neighborhood, a secret sealed behind brick and plaster finally exhaled. Workers renovating a century-old parlor tore into the wall, expecting pipes, maybe pests. Instead, they found brittle towels, rotting insulation, and inside, the tiny skeleton of an infant girl, curled like she'd been poured into the frame. No birth record, no missing persons report, just a child hidden in silence. Her house had known laughter, Christmases, generations growing and aging, never realizing a body slept behind its walls. But back in the 1960s, it belonged to someone else, Loretta King. She was 19, poor, and black, working as a live-in housekeeper for a powerful white family. When she became pregnant, the father, her married employer, told her to take care of it, and Loretta understood. So one freezing night in 1963, she gave birth alone in a bathtub. The baby cried, alive. Loretta wrapped her in cloth, walked to the parlor, opened the wall, and placed her daughter inside. Then she sealed it. Brick, plaster, paint. A perfect silence. No one heard the cries, but Loretta did. For years. She never married, never had another child, just aged under the weight of what she'd done. When police finally found her in a nursing home in 2003, she was nearly gone. But when she heard what had been uncovered, something shifted. She asked for a priest, and with her final breath, she whispered one word, Angela. No paperwork, no photos, no grave, just a name spoken once before death sealed it again. How many homes carry memories of things they were never meant to hold? Comment inside if this one made you hear your walls differently. 4. The sacrifice of silence. It looked like nothing, just a narrow white house, half-eaten by hedges and time, a place meant to disappear. But in 1985, it became the last place Katie Laramie was seen alive. 17, soft-voiced. The kind of girl who apologized when you bumped into her. She scribbled poetry in the corners of math homework and always double-knotted her laces before stepping out the door. One winter morning, she left for school. She never made it to the bus stop. The town combed rivers, woods, crawl spaces, but Kitty was gone, like the ground swallowed her whole. And over time, people moved on, except her mother, who left the porch light on for decades. The truth waited 2 doors down. Earl Tisdale, retired, reclusive. The kind of neighbor you forget is even there. No kids, no wife, just drawn blinds and decades of silence. In 2013, as cancer hollowed him from the inside, Earl was moved to hospice. One night, half-conscious, he gripped his niece's wrist and whispered, "You have to tell them what I did." He said Katie had walked past that morning, and he called out to her, asked for help with something in the basement. She trusted him. He was just Mr. Tisdale. Harmless. Familiar. What happened next, he called an accident. But you don't accidentally strangle a teenage girl. You don't accidentally wrap her in a tarp. And you don't pour concrete over a body unless you never plan to speak of it again. Katie was buried beneath his basement floor while he watched TV above her, while trick-or-treaters rang his doorbell, while mothers warned their daughters to stay safe. "I still hear her humming," he whispered. When authorities tore up the floor, they found her exactly where he said. Still wearing her winter coat, still clutching her spiral notebook. The last page held a poem, barely legible, smeared but intact. One line pierced through the years like a scream preserved in ink. Some houses don't have windows, just teeth. 80 didn't run away, she didn't vanish, she was buried 2 doors down while the world kept walking past. If you're still here, ask yourself this. Why do monsters only speak when death has already silenced their victims? Comment teeth if this one took your breath. 3. The witness killer. Russell Smarcar didn't kill in rage. He killed like a surgeon cuts out a threat. Quiet, clinical, final. He wasn't trying to win. He was trying to delete. Michael Mansfield, 20, was home from college. Told his parents he was meeting a friend in Arlington Heights. He never came back. 6 months later, Ruth Martin didn't show up for work. She was steady, predictable. Her garage floor was spattered with blood. A spent shell casing from a handgun sat like punctuation on the concrete. Her car turned up in a motel lot, the trunk reeking. No body, no closure. Then came October 1976. Jay and Robin Fry, young, married, expecting, were found on their knees in their Lincoln, Illinois home, execution style. Robin was 3 months pregnant. Jay died trying to shield her. 4 victims, 1 link. They were all scheduled to testify against Russell Smarcar. For what? Petty theft, a guitar, some records, 2 ribeye steaks. But to Russell, they weren't people, they were risks. Michael had agreed to testify in a dorm theft. Ruth had seen him shoplift. Jay chased him out of a store. Robin Fry? She didn't even know him. She just happened to be in the wrong house with the wrong man. Smarcar didn't panic. He planned. And when Jay's sister saw him fleeing the murder scene, he tried to have her killed too. From inside prison, his cellmate exposed the plot. That stopped the next death, but not the silence. He was convicted for the Freeze murders, 2 life sentences. But Michael and Ruth, no bodies, no justice, just decades of quiet. Until 2011. Smarcar, dying in prison, started talking. He said he buried Michael deep enough to forget, said Ruth begged. Please, I have children. And he shot her anyway. Not for money, not revenge, just to erase the truth. Because to Russell Smarcar, truth wasn't sacred. It was dangerous. And he made sure it died first. If you've made it this far, comment erased and tell us which victim haunted you most and why. 2. The family she burned. Pine Grove Street looked like a postcard. Lawns trimmed, porches painted, curtains drawn at the same hour every night, and Marilyn Whitaker was its punctuation mark. A smile at the mailbox, a pie at your door, soft-spoken, always waving, the neighbor everyone forgot to worry about. But in 1997, the house next door exploded, ripping the silence wide open. Inside were Thomas Fletcher, his wife Emily, and their 8-year-old daughter Zoe. The blast was instant. The fire, total. Fire crews called it a gas leak, tragic, random. But Marilyn knew better because she caused it. Her motive wasn't sudden, it fermented. Thomas had cost her a job, exposing falsified grant records. Emily led the PTA vote that pushed Marilyn's niece out of school. And Zoe? Zoe just looked too much like the daughter Marilyn had buried years earlier. Same eyes, same laugh. So Marilyn studied them, their rhythms, their routines. She listened through the walls, felt their footsteps through the floor, and one night she crept into their basement with a wrench and a lighter. She told herself it wasn't murder, just a message, a scare. But fire doesn't take half measures. The house ignited like a confession, and Marilyn stood on her porch and watched. Hands folded, eyes dry. For 17 years she played the part. Baked cookies, trimmed hedges, watered petunias. smiled through every anniversary of the fire. She never blinked, never cracked. Until 2014, when cancer began to hollow her from the inside. On her deathbed, she whispered everything to her sister. The sabotage, the screams, the smell of burning flesh. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She just wanted someone to know. The Fletchers didn't die in an accident. They were selected by the woman next door, the one who waved at their kids, left muffins at the door, smiled as she turned the gas. How close is too close? How many monsters live within handshake distance? Comment porch if this one made you look twice at your neighbors. 1. The man who buried the truth. This is our final story, and maybe the hardest to hear. Because this time, silence didn't just bury a crime. It buried a mother and her child. Beckley, West Virginia. Summer 2000. Susan Carter, 41, and her 10-year-old daughter, Natasha. Alex. To her friends. Vanished without a trace. One day they were running errands, planning for school, smiling in photos. The next, they were gone. No struggle, no break-in, no goodbye. Just an empty house and a name whispered around town. Larry Webb. He wasn't a boyfriend, not family, just a helpful man with a spare room. A longtime acquaintance who offered them a place to stay during Susan's custody battle. When questioned, Webb said they left. Maybe Susan panicked. Maybe she ran. He even helped pass out flyers, smiling for news cameras, pretending to care. And for 24 years, that's where the story stayed. Cold, silent, forgotten. Then, in April 2024, Webb, 82 and dying in prison on unrelated charges, asked to speak, not out of guilt, but exhaustion. He claimed Susan accused him of stealing and lunged at him. So he shot her. Knowing Alex saw it all, he killed her too. She was 10. He kept their bodies in the basement for days, until the smell forced him to act. He wrapped them in sheets, drove to his property, dug a shallow grave, and went on with his life as if nothing happened. Only after Webb's death did police follow the pencil-sketched map he left behind. There, behind the house where he rebuilt his life, they found Susan and Alex still side by side. Alex's father, who never stopped searching, said it best.
A day, but it's also a happy day because I could bring my baby home. It's been on 24 years. And this case went cold so many times that, I almost lost hope several times. But I can tell anybody that's in my position, just never give up. Never give up hope of finding your child. I mean, somebody knows something, that with the help of these fine people here, she may never have been found, especially where we did find her. It was in a place that was just inaccessible nearly. It was just, so, every time I would drive down the freeway, I would get a feeling, when I drive by that place, that's maybe where she was.
Sometimes, monsters don't wear masks. They open the door, offer you comfort, and wait until your guard is down. And when the truth finally surfaces, it's not for justice, it's just for closure. If you've made it this far, ask yourself, what stories never get told because the villain dies before we find out they were won? Comment, too late, if you're still thinking about the ones we didn't find in time. Subscribe for more stories the system tried to forget. And remember, evil doesn't end with a sentence. Sometimes it ends with silence.